Të nderuar miq, mirëmbrëma, takohemi përsëri në Fokus. Skandali Mechanical i FBI, hetimet për kryeministrin shqiptar Rama, personin A, do të kem diçka për vizitën e fundit në SBA të Klliçit dhe përsëri me Orhan Sakiqin për të dhënë pjesë nga historia e Shqipërisë.
Themselves considering running for the nomination. So we have a very good list of people, and I think having the debate about their qualifications and their views for the country would be a very good thing and very helpful period to go into.
Skandali i spionit potencial rus Mechanical ka nxjerrë lakuriq liderin global. Nëse hearing parlamentar në Shqipëri do të kryej siç kryhet një hearing në Kongresin Amerikan, liderin global do të merrnin me forcë, me dhunë të vinte të dëshmonte. Ka një ndryshim që këtu në SBA personi mund të përdor amendamentin e 5 pra të mos flas, sepse ky amendament ndalon gjithkënd që të flas kundër vetes tij. Dhe së fundmi presidenti Trump, i cili është në hetime, ka deponuar rreth 4 orë në prokurori dhe ka përdorur amendamentin e 5, pra nuk është përgjigjur pyetjeve të prokurorit. Ta ndjekim se çfarë ka thënë Trump nga video e fundit pikërisht nga ky deponim.
Even another politician who has been persecuted, harassed, and in every other way unfairly treated like President Donald J. Trump. What Letitia James has tried to do the last number of years is a disgrace to the legal system, an affront to the New York State taxpayers, and a violation of the solemn rights and protections afforded by the United States Constitution. I once asked, if you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? I was asking that question. Now I know the answer to that question. When your family, your company, and all the people in your orbit have become the targets of an unfounded, politically motivated witch hunt supported by lawyers, prosecutors, and even the fake news media, you really have no choice. We cannot permit a renegade and out-of-control prosecutor to use this investigation as a means of advancing her political career.
Dollars to regulate the American energy industry out of existence with these ESG rules. It will harm the American economy, and it makes life worse for just about every American.
Pra, akuza akt padi ngrihen kudo. Si funksionon në juria madhe? Sepse po abuzohet si në Shqipëri, por dhe nga media sponsorizuar nga Soros këtu për ta bërë çështjen një çështje roz. Jo çështje serioze, dhe në fakt është çështje shumë e madhe, është çështje serioze e madhe, sepse FBI, siç thot gazetari Peter Lucas, i cili ka shkruar libra për Shqipërinë, FBI ka 2 grupime. Grupimi i madh që lufton kundra krimit dhe disa shefat të FBI që kryejnë krim. Lucas ka mbështetur Berishën, lidhur me non gradën, duke risjell dhe njëherë lidhjet e Blinken me Soros. Për të qenë qartë për ta që bërtasin në Shqipëri, Mechanical, FBI merret me krimin brenda Amerikës. FBI heton trafiqet e drogave ose terrorizmin jashtë, por non grada nuk ka asnjë lidhje me këtë. Si funksionon ajo që quhet juria e madhe? Mechanical dhe avokatët e tij nuk din asgjë se si janë zhvilluar hetimet sepse kanë qenë sekret. Prokurori ose prokurorët që ngrejnë çështjen duke pasur në hetim një ish-zyrtar të lartë, kanë bërë hetime dhe kanë mbledhur me mira fakte e faqe pa diskutim, të cilat i dërgohen jurist madhe, e cila është 20 ose 23 vjet, dhe juria në bazë të fakteve të afruara mendon që çështja e ngritur nga prokurori mund të kalojë për hetim, për gjykim në gjykat ose jo. Kaq. Këtu mbaron me jurinë. Në vend të qerë se në Shqipëri do të ketë hetime në shkurt. Jo, në shkurt janë gjyq. Një shkurti ka qenë data e paraqitjes parë të avokatëve të Mechanical në New York, sepse ka 2 akt padi, dhe 24 shkurti është në Washington DC. Rama duhet përgjigjet teknikisht këtyre pyetjeve. A është thirrur të dëshmojë nga FBI për hetimet? Por në qoftë se ka ndodhur kjo, hetimet nuk kanë qenë sekrete. Pra, a e ka ditur Rama? Në fakt, Rama e ka ditur që në shtator që ka pasur hetime, sepse është kontaktuar në shtator zyra e tij nga një media online amerikane. Në qoftë se ka dëshmuar, a ka bashkëpunuar Rama me hetuesit e FBI-t duke pas një marrëveshje që nëse ai ka shkelur një ligj të mos dënohet dhe e ka shitur spionin potencial rus? E njëjta gjë është për bashkëpunëtorin A, që në Shqipëri ka nxjerrë dhe mbiemrin Eza. Ai në fakt ka folur duke thënë që jam takuar vetëm 2 minuta me kryeministrin, zyrën e tij dhe shefin e FBI-t. A ka bashkëpunuar ai me FBI? A ka dëshmuar ai në favor të hetimit të FBI-t, se fakti që nuk është arrestuar të lë ta nënkuptosh këtë? Apo është ai pjesë e marrëveshjeve për të lehtësuar dënimin e McGonigal? Dhe ne të mos kemi kur mundësi të kuptojmë, të njohim në qoftë se Rama ka qenë realisht në time. Aktualisht nuk ka akuzë për kryeministrin shqiptar, sepse FBI bën hetim për në shtetasit e vet. Në qoftë se FBI do të kërkoj fakte, dëshmi, do ta kërkonte nga Departamenti Amerikan i Shtetit lejen që ta kryente këtë. Gjithë e dinë që Rama e ka mbështetjen e Blinkenit të Departamentit Amerikan të Shtetit, fal dhe lidhjet me plakun e shëmtuar George Soros. Pra janë pikpyetje të mëdha. Fakti që lideri global u fshe për 5 ditë tregon që është rënditur. A është tërhequr dhe trembur ai mbas këshillimeve me koreano-amerikanë një urikim në ditët e fundit largimit nga Shqipëria? Kjo nuk dihet. A do të ketë probleme i urikim në qoftë se nuk ka informuar për takimet e një zyrtari amerikan të FBI-t, apo është ajo pjesë e një skenari më të madh? Shqiptarët duan të mësojnë të vërtetën dhe ka ardhur koha që të mos jenë peng e një kryeministri i cili nga mendimadhësia, babëzia, kompleksi fshataresk i inferioritetit ka rënë të opozitën. Përfituesit financiar janë personi B njeriu metës, personi A njeriu sigurimit i themi, i askujt e gjithëve, megjithëse këtu kam dëgjuar fjalë të mira nga komuniteti. Fakt, por nuk e njeh njëri për biznesmen të madh, milioner, me këto sasi të mëdha para në kesh, një tjetër fakt. Por secili në SBA prezumohet i pafajshëm derisa të shpallet i fajshëm nga një gjykat. Si spioni potencial rus McGonigal, personi A, pa falur pastaj për kryeministrin ton me ëndra për lider global dhe personin e rrezikshëm B, Duçka sipas medias shqiptare, i lidhur me një konglomerat kinez nën sanksione nga amerikanët, që njihet si një krah i Partisë Komuniste Kineze. Pra, kushëriri Metës, shpëtori Ramës ndërlidhësi me njerëzit e tjerë që kanë qenë dhe afër, janë afruar për një foto Berishës. Nuk është çështje thjesht roz me një dashnore, një dashur, jo as pak. Është problem i madh, është një problem i sistemit të FBI-t që ka kohë që tregon shenja dobësie, gridi, babëzie, dhe njerëz që punojnë fillojnë në FBI dhe më vonë kanë syrin tek fitimet, milionat, duke shitur informacion pikërisht nga zyrat e një organizate të ndershme me njerëz heronj që kanë mbajtur shtyllat e demokracisë amerikane. Një ish oficer i CIA-s, Kevin Carroll, me cilin kam kontaktuar këtë javë, kam marrë informacione nga ai për të formuar një ide më të mirë, ka dhënë qartë se çfarë ka ndodhur, por akuza e rëndë e tij është kjo, që McGonigal ka marrë para nga qeveritë shqiptare dhe qeveria e Bosnjës.
So through 2018, Charles McGonigal held one of the most important positions in U.S. counterintelligence. He was the special agent in charge of foreign counterintelligence at the New York field office of the FBI, which is their biggest field office, about 2,000 agents. And it's very important because it covers New York City, where you have United Nations headquarters and all the foreign missions and consulates that go along with that. So an enormous number of foreign government officials, including folks from places like China, Russia, North Korea, Cuba, Iran, that are there in New York City. He got charged in two separate indictments, one in Washington and one in New York City. The one in Washington charges him with accepting $225,000 at least from foreign governments, including those of Albania and Bosnia, in return for doing official acts for them while he was still in the FBI, which is obviously criminal. And he made false statements about that on his annual financial disclosures, for example, to the FBI. In New York, he was charged with sanctions violations and money laundering for doing work with a sanctioned Russian oligarch who he'd previously investigated after he retired from the FBI. Allegations, and Mr. McGonigal has distinguished counsel representing him, and so I'm sure we'll hear his side of the case. But he was taking money from foreign governments, is what's alleged, while he was working for the FBI and then working for this sanctioned Russian individual. I'm really concerned for two reasons. One, as the special agent in charge of foreign counterintelligence in New York, McGonigal would have had access to a vast amount of United States intelligence information, which he could have passed on to a foreign government. Obviously, since he's been taking money from the Russians, since he's gotten out, he would have the opportunity to give information about U.S. counterintelligence operations against Russia. Perhaps worst of all, several years ago, there were allegedly many Chinese arrested and executed for suspicion of working for the CIA. McGonigal was put in charge of that investigation. So any lessons learned in that investigation about why Chinese intelligence was able to possibly identify people working for the CIA could be compromised by and his former mistress stepped forward after he told her that he was not going to leave his wife and told his boss that he should look into Mr. McGonigal's connections with the Albanians and hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash that she'd seen in his apartment, even though he was a public servant on a civil service salary. Among the things she said that were concerning were that McGonigal had his family in Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is a very expensive suburb, an apartment in Brooklyn, which is now an expensive borough, and he would take her to lavish restaurant meals, go see sporting events in private boxes. And Mr. McGonigal was a senior FBI official, but that's beyond the financial means of a government official who's not on the take. So it's very concerning that that unexplained wealth was not discovered while he was serving in the FBI. It should have set off red flags. Unfortunate, because it's going to cast doubt upon the results of all the investigations that have taken place since. People on the left side of the spectrum may think that McGonigal didn't pursue certain leads to cover up Russian contacts with President Trump. People on the right side of the spectrum might reasonably think that McGonigal opened the investigation into then candidate Trump for inappropriate reasons. So the integrity of that investigation has unfortunately been cast into doubt. Myself, I think it was appropriate to open an investigation of President Trump in 2016 because of statements he made in public about wanting the Russians to hack Hillary Clinton's emails and the fact that some people associated with his campaign had allegedly had contacts with Russian intelligence. But as we all know, ultimately, Robert Mueller found that there was no provable criminal conspiracy between Trump and Russian intelligence. So McGonigal and Manafort, I believe, both now have worked for Oleg Deripaska, the sanctioned Russian oligarch. Paul Manafort was the chairman of President Trump's campaign, and he was, I believe, present at the Trump Tower meeting, which included individuals representing Russian intelligence who were offering derogatory information about Hillary Clinton. And Manafort subsequently met overseas with a Russian intelligence officer to give him confidential campaign information. So the association, the indirect association through Deripaska of McGonigal and Manafort is a concern. Well, I read in the press yesterday that McGonigal's ex-girlfriend had contacted his boss, the assistant director of the FBI in charge of the New York office, to report her concerns. That man, Mr. Bill Sweeney, has subsequently retired from the FBI and is in the private sector. The press called him and asked him what he did in response to the allegation. And he wouldn't say, which is his right now that he's a private citizen, and maybe even what he's been asked to say by prosecutors. I have great respect for the FBI, but like any organization, it has its bad apples and it makes its mistakes. But I would hope and trust that the most senior people in the organization are not dirty.
Pse them që nuk është çështje thjesht, nuk është çështje thjesht korrupsioni, sepse një zyrtar amerikan që e lejon veten të marrë dekorat qytetar nderi në një fshat qytet vogël Tropoj, që merr para në garazh parkingu si mafioz, që lidhet dhe pëlqejë të thohet miku madh nga kryeministri i një vendi të vogël, mik nga një operativ sigurimi, nuk meriton që ta trajtosh me seriozitet këtë person, por kur mendon që ai është pjesë e një rrjedhje të një ndryshimi thelbësor të sistemit të FBI-t, kjo do të jap Kongresit Republikan në hetimet që do të ketë për FBI një pjesë mase do të jetë dhe për McGonigal. E vogël, kryesisht do të merren me spionët e FBI-t që raportojnë në Kongres për Hunter Biden, ku është çështja më e madhe, por Hunter Biden e ka një lidhje me McGonigal, sepse kushëriri Metës, këshilltari i jashtëm i Ramës, është njeriu i konglomeratit kinez, famkeq, por me të ka qenë i lidhur dhe Hunter Biden. Pra nuk është kaq e thjeshtë ndaj administrata e Bidenit, po hesht. Do të ishte haptas kundra Ramës. Media, në Washington ka qenë që pse mbështetet Rama dhe kanë sjell dhe njëherë në vëmendje një artikull në Meksik për një kartel të madh droge, ku sipas medias amerikane akuzohet Rama. Pra, kandili i tij ka kohë që ka filluar të fiket, e kemi thënë. Dhe në maj do jetë goditja përfundimtare nëse opozita do të jetë e zonja. Rast në flagrant nuk ka.
So that all over the world people can make their own decisions, but based on reality, not on propaganda. It's a pleasure to talk with you, Robert. Thank you for having me on your fine program. And, stay strong. Stay strong.
Bill O'Reilly në intervistën e fundit për Fokus, kur e kam pyetur që do të ketë ndonjë libër për komunizmin, socializmin, është përgjigjur.
My books do so well because they don't teach the truth in a lot of public schools in America. And kids don't know what the Civil War was all about, or what George Washington did, or what General Patton did, or they don't know. And they don't want to know because they're got this in their hand every second and has diverts their attention from serious things. So I write these books. We have a whole bunch of them for children as well, that explains this in a way that's not boring, that's kind of exciting, but you learn about what went on in the past, because what went on in the past, as you know, Robert, influences what happens now.
Ai më ka thënë që unë mund të përdor me lejen e tij pjesë nga emisioni i tij shumë i shikueshëm këtu, dhe do të sill sot intervistën që ai kishte me Ish drejtori në CIA-s i sekretarit shtetit Mike Pompeo, i cili ka botuar një libër Mos thëlsho asnjë cantin, dhe do ta jap plot. Mbas kontakteve, shpresojmë që sekretari i shtetit, ish drejtori i CIA-s të jetë dhe posaçërisht për ne në Fokus. Dhe natyrisht do të ishte interesante të na shpjegonte se si funksionon ajo lloj nëngrate ndaj Berishës, edhe pse ma ka dhënë përgjigjen shumë të saktë dikur Boltoni që nuk ka shumë rëndësi, ato vinë nga zyra jo shumë rëndësore, por të kenë vëmendjen, pa thënë Boltoni, ata që kanë lidhje me Rusinë. Del prap, dalim aty ku jemi tek problemi më i madh.
Get through them, but that's why I like it. Now, we're going to talk about it, Mr. Secretary, in a moment, but I want to get your contemporized opinions on some things that are very important going on right now. The climate change thing, what's your read on that?
Well, I think you have it right. To put that first amongst all the challenges America faces is just not logical. It doesn't make any sense. They're driving even more problems than they are creating. We can all figure our way to technology solutions to keeping our air clean and our water safe, but to put climate change at the forefront, to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to regulate the American energy industry out of existence with these ESG rules, it will harm the American economy, and it makes life worse for just about every American. It's an enormous mistake. It's a misunderstanding of the various threats we face around the world too. I'm sure we'll talk about China and Chairman Kim and all the bad guys, but make no mistake, it's not the number one threat to the United States of America.
Okay, when you were traveling as Secretary of State all over the world, foreign leaders, were they bringing up their concern about climate change as Biden and Kerry and at Crew does? Were they concerned about it?
No, they were frankly happy that we weren't putting it in their face in the way that the Obama administration has, and now the Biden administration is doing as well. They too, they understand that there may well be a transition, fair enough. Affordable energy for everyone makes sense, but no, they didn't bring it up. They wanted to actually talk about how we could get American LNG imported and how we could get pipelines running into their country and how the United States could help them with their economy and their security situation. They weren't putting climate change above everything else. It's only when they gather for these global confabs and fancy places where that is the topic that dominates literally everything else.
Okay. Now, on your book tour, you made headlines by saying that you believe there may be a war between China and the United States coming on up. Put that in some kind of perspective for us, please.
Well, Bill, we've now seen the Department of Defense senior leaders say the same thing. I also talked a lot about the fact that, frankly, the Chinese Communist Party has been at war with the American economy for 4 decades, and we just literally did nothing about it. We didn't defend our workers. We didn't defend our intellectual property. We thought if we engaged more with the Chinese Communist Party, they'd become more like us, when just the opposite has actually taken place. Xi Jinping, now essentially leader for life in China, has made clear his desire for global hegemony. He wants to run the world. Pretty straightforward. We have to make sure that this is a world that is dominated not by Marxist-Leninist ideology in China, but by a set of understandings that have created an enormous amount of wealth and brought billions out of starvation, the system that we know best.
Okay. I'm a logical guy, a linear thinker, as are you. I didn't think Putin would go into Ukraine because I knew the unintended consequences were going to come back on Putin, ruin him as a world leader with any credibility, and hurt Russia. So I said, he's saber rattling, but he won't really do it, and he did it. I bring the same logic to Xi in China. They got 1.5 billion people there, many of whom are basically subsistence people. All right, they live from day to day. They don't have reserves. They don't have bank accounts. They don't have credit cards. They're just living on what they can get that day. Any kind of war generated by China or any kind of action against Taiwan or anything like that immediately slaps sanctions on China, just like Putin, okay, cripples their economy. And then if it's a shoot war, the whole planet goes up into chaos. The communists in Beijing, are they that self-destructive in your opinion?
Bill, there's risk that they are. Your point on Putin is exactly right. What I think, and your point about being linear and logical is exactly right. What we have to take into account is that these folks just think about human life differently, and they think about their country differently. Chairman Kim in North Korea doesn't give a rip that there's 25 million North Koreans starving. The Ayatollah in Iran doesn't care that his people are suffering. In the same way, Xi Jinping didn't care that 6, 8, 10 million people could die if he allowed this virus to travel across the world. Their logic is simply different than ours. It is about power. They certainly want to stay in power, so they've got work to do there. But when you own all the tools, the information space, the surveillance state, the military, and the police, you can do lots of things that look to us, to build to you, like really stupid blunders like Putin did. And you can do a stupid blunder like that in China and still maintain your capacity to rule. That's the danger, is that he will not understand logic the same way that you and I do.
But she drew back on the COVID stuff because millions of Chinese took to the streets, and it looked to me like Beijing got nervous. They blinked, all right, because he wanted to isolate all the towns, Shanghai and everything else, and basically keep people inside because of the horrible COVID problem they have. He pulled back from that. And 1.5 billion people are hard to control. Certainly, your time as director of the CIA, you knew how much unrest there was, particularly in Western China, in the Uyghurs and all of that front. I mean, yes, they've got, as you said, all of the power centralized in the hands of the Communist Party, but 1.5 billion people don't want you. You're not going to be there. And she has got to be thinking about that, right?
Oh, I think he absolutely thinks about it every day, but he doesn't think about it with the same kind of logic that you do, and nor does he apply a risk factor in the same way that we would. Remember Tiananmen Square, right? Chinese people hacked off, all bad. They put it down. Remember the protests in Iran in this last, 6, 7 months now? The Iranians managed to put it down. They'll let, to your point about letting COVID go, they'll let the pressure off. They'll have a little pressure valve release, and then they will crush those that remain in their resistance. I think Xi believes firmly that he's got the whip hand. And so, he's told the Chinese people that his term reunifying Taiwan with China is the most important thing to their nation. He's propagandized. They now, I think, largely believe it as well. He's got a lot of space to move about the cabinet in ways that can put a lot of risk on the United States of America.